groups in the world, and therefore guides and direct them in their facings of life challenges and their efforts in fulfilling their needs. On our part as intellectuals, if we claim ourselves as intellectuals, we have to be our responsibility, behave responsibly in providing the publics with the answer that they need. Some of the answer we provide may come from the research works that we have conducted or we're going to conduct. Therefore, this research has to be, the premise of this research has to be of the concern to the researchers. The kind of research quality and credibility that we produce depend on our choice and understanding of the kind of Islam that we want in the future, and the nature and strengths of our Islamic studies program that we develop. It depends very much on this. Whatever and whichever we decide on, research will be a significant part of our academic future. Therefore, it's underlying the importance of our consciousness of what we're going to do, the premise that we take on in our research. The quality of our research will ultimately determine the strength of our institutions and our ability to build our nations and our ummah. Though there are some ground rules that we have to abide to, that we have to observe our strength and abilities in conducting our academic research. The first I would like to venture and propose is that we must indeed recover. We must indeed not rediscover. If you think of some of people claim that it's already there out there before, so now it's a time of rediscover. Doesn't matter, recover or rediscover our intellectual legacy of the past. This is not again to romanticize the past, but rather so that we understand and locate our historical roots and identity as Muslim. All this is for us to understand, locate or relocate ourselves in our historical roots and identity, so that we're not going to lose sight of who we are or who we were and what we should be in the future. To the extent that this is true and necessary, our students and scholars must be very grounded on the Islamic traditions. You cannot, as a Muslim researchers, we cannot detach ourselves for the sake of being current, being contemporary. We cannot detach ourselves from our legacy and our Islamic traditions, our future. Our Islamic traditions and our Islamic legacy is one of the building blocks that we should build on. And the other point is the appreciations of the Islamic tradition. However, should be thoroughly philosophical, theoretical understanding. The understanding and embrace of philosophy is decidedly one of the factors that contributed to the development and success of Islam and Muslim community in the medieval period. This was recorded in our history. In today's world, grounding ourselves on traditions and theories remains inadequate. While understandings and mastering the Islamic teachings and doctrines are important, knowing that contemporary situations and realities is equally demanded. Our interest in philosophical and historical understanding of theories must therefore, underline, must therefore be balanced with our ability to critically and creatively understand current and needs in a very precise, contextual, practical, and pragmatic manner. This kind of understanding will help us to provide practical solutions and research outputs. This ability is what differentiates between what we call as the elites and the public intellectuals. As the title suggests, the elite intellectuals, to my understanding, represent the armchair researchers common in the anthropological worlds, where, in our sense, they are so detached from realities and devoid of social sensitivities. They live in their own worlds, in their own cocoon. These researchers perform research for their own sake and not for the sake, and for their own sake and for the sake of their career. The measure of progress are their KPIs, their key performance indicators. How many index journals, how many ISI journals, the research outputs are out there in the clouds, cannot be put into reality, solving the problems of the society. Elite intellectuals harps on and romanticize the glory of the past, brag about their mastery of theories, and remain in the comforts of the lofty ideals and edifices. They bask in positions and honorific titles. They are proud of that. However, on the contrary, the world is now more in need of public intellectuals of the society. And this public intellectual, defined as intellectual who are very much connected and are concerned about social needs and the public affairs of knowledge and of society. The research that they engage in aims at solving pressing and urgent societal problems, all for the benefits of society and the public goods. These are the kinds of intellectuals that we have the potential, that all the researchers have the potentials to grapple with the problems of many research areas mentioned earlier. A good research is also one that is unconventional and out of the box. It manifests a strong intellectual scholarship. It requires researchers to dare challenge. It requires researchers to dare challenge the limiting boundaries of thoughts and existing social frameworks. We cannot just be happy with what we already have out there. We have to be able to challenge and expand the boundary of existing knowledge. In this regard, a good scholar is one who is naturally, culturally adaptive and empathic, and possesses a sense of universals and humanizing approach. This scholar must also be interdisciplinary in awareness and consciousness, and he must therefore embrace the inter and intra traditional Muslim, and then builds upon existing traditions of knowledge, building upon what has been discovered and verified. After all, knowledge is a hierarchy. One way of looking at it is in the realms of language. There used to be a time when Muslim world regard the Arabic language as a monopoly of the Muslims. Today, Arabic is no longer the only or dominant language of Islam. Not only that, Islam is now spoken. Islam is now comprehended, understood, studied, and researched in many other languages. In Malay, there are a lot of documents on Islam since very early days. In English, in Persian, in Turkish, in German, in French, and in many other languages of the world, be it written or unwritten. One day, it will be studied and researched in Chinese, or it may already be now in Chinese, in Japanese, in Korean. It may already be now. Especially in Chinese, because Islam has been in China for a very long time. I'll not dwell into this. Maybe we need some other platform to dwell into all this. Muslims, therefore, have to expand on their language capability. Researchers have to expand on their language capability. We cannot just be happy with one research language and claim we have done a good research, whereas our references are only in one limited language. The ability to anticipate the significance and dominance of these languages is very crucial. Proficiency in at least two of these languages, which I call it as additional research languages, is necessary and required for contemporary scholars. Otherwise, what we discover in our research might have been a duplications of what have been discovered of the same research or the similar research in other languages. Therefore, a third language would be a bonus for researchers. Building upon existing knowledge and learning from others was the mark of early Muslim scholarship. They're not alone. They're not alone. They have learned from other traditions. The early Muslim inventions were a result of medieval Arabs learning from the scientific knowledge and discoveries of the Greeks. and the Romans, as well as the others. The introduction of philosophy into Islam, into Muslim worlds, that subsequently led to the reintroductions of Hellenistic philosophy to the Judeo-Christian world, was the result of the early Muslim learning of Greeks and Latins, and subsequently translated into Arabic. Unfortunately, we are increasingly seeing today Muslim isolationism. This has its roots in not so distant past in Muslim history that might have eventually contributed to the ends of Muslim empire. I like to quote Bernard Lewis once observed, our refusals, I quote, our refusal to learn from the West by regarding them as Jahiliyyah or barbarics, compared to our being civilized, and our constant illusion that we are better than them and the rest of humankind. Maybe by virtue of our interpretations and romanticizing verse 110 in Surah Al Imran, Kuntum khayra ummah. That's the verse, that we are the best community. Maybe out of that, romanticizing that verse, that we have problems. And probably contributed to our civilizational downfall. See, for example, what went wrong with Islam. In this regard, we could also learn from the experiences of the Chinese and the Indian civilization. Despite their historical superiority, at one time, say, for example, we can recall gunpowder and numbers 0, for instance. Both civilizations have lost to the West, and today, both India and China have lost to the creativity and invention of Silicon Valley, despite having majority of the foreign workers there coming from both countries and ending up with little, if at all, technological transfer. Though current observation says China and India is coming up very rapidly, that worry some of the enemies of China and India. That also has to do with their rigor and seriousness in scientific research and practical orientation of research, addressing their needs of the day. This brings us to the next important matters. A good research work is one that is done in an academic and scientific manner. Academics and scientific manner. Being scientific is not about being secular or being westernized, but being scientific is about understanding life through verified evidence, truth, and knowledge. We cannot do a required scientific research without being scientifics. We cannot write academic paper without first being academic. My years of experience have shown me that when doing research, most of our researchers have actually resorted to foregone conclusions even before conducting their research. This is unbecoming. How did they do this? Simply on the assumption that Islam has all the answer. Islam has provided the solutions. It's all in the Quran and the Sunnah. It's true. But that's not enough. You have to translate that into practical realities, addressing the needs of the day. So instead of letting the data speak for themselves and directing the flow of research, their research get redefined and redirected into attempt to substantiate their interpreted Quranic claim or the literary evidence from the hadith. In other words, rather than let the data speaks, a typical research is about providing the Quran and the hadith or the hadith right. We need to understand one thing, that nature and the Quran speak one language. They may be different, but they speak one language. They have to. They are not, because they are both created by one true God, Allah the Almighty. And therefore, they both exude a singular meaning about reality. Maybe in a different way. To contradict one another is unfathomable. To interpret and suggest a contradiction between them as such runs against our theological understanding of this world and our universal existence, both of the Creator and His creation. Brothers and sisters, fellow participants and presenters, the last things I'd like to touch on is the kind of attitudes that is necessary to be had in a good scholar and a good researcher as well. It is the questions of proper mindset and attitudes. I like to underscore proper mindset and attitudes. These scholarly attitudes must be developed and nurtured by our academic institutions and programs. A successful program is one that not only provides a strong foundation in scientific learning. So this is the responsibility of the institution to come up with the curriculum that provide the postgraduate students or researchers a strong foundation in scientific learning and also in research. It is also one that creates the environments and platform for individual to think creatively and critically. With that tools, scientific tool of research and learning, researchers, student, postgraduate student will be able to creatively think, and of course, with high level of criticality. Scholars and researchers must be sincere. This is another parameters, very important attitudes, must be sincere and honest in their character. Otherwise, researchers and scholars will commit intellectual crimes and they become intellectual criminals if they're not sincere and honest. They must be willing to culturally adapt and adopt. Thus, they should be able to embrace changes and ready to serve and find solution for societal benefits and the public's good at large. Brothers and sisters, thank you for lending your ears, listening to some of this concern that I have. In conclusion, public intellectual is a good researcher and a scholar who bear the following characteristics: very honest, sincere, and professional in their research work. They must be constantly demonstrating universals and global concerns. They must conduct research to resolve collective problems and offer universal solutions. Regard his research responsibility as fulfillments of common and greater goods of humanity, and not for personal or self-aggrandizement. Thank you for listening, brothers and sisters. Thank you very much. My apology for any weaknesses. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks for the very inspiring and full motivated speech. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may wrap up our lecture today, there are many points that Professor Datuk has liked it, but I only several points that I want to say. And number one, okay, is research should be a good tool to ensure safety and relevance of Muslim in contributing our modern world and society. And number two, Waqf system was once an advanced system economy. The question is still there: how far the system is being utilized? And number three, research should be a great medium to fulfill the need of the Ummah. Number four, we need to recover our intellectual heritage and the golden age of the past. But something attract my attention is that when a professor touched about a difference between elite intellectual and a public intellectual. Well, ladies and gentlemen, elite intellectual is researchers who conduct research for the sake of the performance of job, pursuing how many journal that you make, fulfill career need, and so on. While public intellectual researchers conduct for the current need, society and the country, and must be unconventional, out of the box, natural, adaptive, and of course, interdisciplinary. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of organizer again, I would like to thank for the very informative, interesting talk. May all audiences find this as good motivation to complete their journey in respective research. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned as we will have several agendas ahead in the program, like research skill generic workshop and research poster competition. But before we finish, may I have your attention, ladies and gentlemen? For now, we'll have a photograph session. Dear all participants, please turn on your camera. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Okay, wait, ready. Okay. But no, they're not ready yet. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, next.
So that's all from us. Over to you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay. All right.